This week on New to You, we talk about the movie The Trouble with Harry and the graphic novel Mr. Punch.
Piping hot pipes, pumping power and pride.
Welcome to the second episode about fall and autumn here at the New to You show. Yeah.
Yeah.
So with me this week is
Keith Allen Vincent.
and
Jules.
Julien Koetsch is back, and also with us is,
Mary Varn.
and I am John Holt. So last week we brought you Election and Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. Whoa! So
That pretty much sums it up, too.
This week we've got a couple more picks. One is a movie from Mary.
Oh,
No,
well,
wait,
our theme is
From
fall.
Jules.
Our theme is fall. Did we mention
and
that?
autumn. Yeah, I kind
Okay,
of said
sorry
it. And,
about
then,
that.
and then we also have a pick from Keith, the Comical Tragedy or Tragical Comedy of Mr. Punch. So we'll get into those a little bit. But first, let's talk about what was new to you this week, Keith.
Oh, shucks. I had something. Oh, yeah. I was a friend of mine runs a website called Gamological Society, and we make funny little videos sometimes on it, and the latest one just dropped. And so you can see me on the GamologicalSociety.com, which is affiliated with The Onion. And you can see me in a movie, in a little short called Pete Strackmeyer's Living Room Video Game University.
Cool.
That's awesome.
It's a good website for video games anyway, if you're into video games, and it's a pretty funny little video. I was
Will
proud
it be
to
an
be a part of
ongoing
it.
series or?
It has been for a couple years, but for certain reasons, he hasn't been able to do too many of them lately. And this might actually be one of the last. He's about to go away
Translocate.
somewhere else. Yeah. But I hope not. I hope we can still make them because I think they're really hilarious. Even if I wasn't involved with them, I think that they're really funny. His character Pete Strackmeyer is really, really funny. He's this perfect, it's the perfect balance of obliviousness and confidence. He's just this dumb guy, but it's great. If you want to see it, it's funny. I think.
Right.
I play Chet, the assistant.
Nice.
So Mary, what was new to you this week?
I got an iPhone game called Pixel Defenders Puzzle, and I kind of like it. It's pretty cool. It's just a little combination of color block moving, sort of similar to Bejeweled kind of thing, but then moving the blocks makes, once you match the blocks, it makes little heroes, and then you can match the heroes to make better heroes, and then the heroes fight bad guys. So it's like a mashup of role-playing and
Puzzle gaming.
puzzle-y gaming stuff. And
Cool.
So, yeah.
How'd you find out about it?
I think somebody tweeted about it.
All right.
Gotta say, I'm a little put off by the fact that it seems like all the fighting people are guys, and you're always protecting a lady.
Would you rather
But-
fight the lady?
Well, I think it just makes it up. The ladies could be
Yes.
fighting.
Yeah. I
But
agree.
yeah, but it's a cute little
Well,
game.
you should
I
just
think
play Metroid over and over again.
So good.
So Jules, what was new to you this week?
New to me was the new series called Brooklyn Nine-Nine, starring
Jack
Andy
Black.
Sandberg,
Andy Samberg, and a bunch
Louis
of
C.K.
You
people.
Terry
sound really
Crews.
excited about that.
Terry
I-
Crews, Joe Lotugra.
Yeah, Andrea Vitoli,
It has a great cast, and
Ben
that's
Cerberus.
the only good thing I can say about it. I only watched the pilot and was super underwhelmed, and would not recommend it. But you never know. Maybe
Stick
it'll
with
get
it.
better.
Might get better.
It gets
I'm
better.
hoping it gets better. There's a lot of talent on that show. Joe Lotrulia, from the state.
Ben Cerberus from I Made Him Up. And
So-
Louis C.K.
So yeah, under excited. I guess the other new thing to me is iOS 7.
You're only allowed one new thing, Jules. Come on.
Well, you
I know
know,
he wanted
we
to-
skipped you
I
for
had
a couple weeks.
a bad new thing, and
He wanted to. He wanted to.
so I
balance
wanted
it.
like another new thing. So yeah, new operating system on my phone. Yay.
Nice.
It's on your iPad too.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's on
I
my
haven't put it
iPad.
on my iPad yet.
It's on my pad.
It's there's some good new stuff. There's some bugs. Whatever.
Yeah.
It is what
I'm,
it is.
I'm lukewarm on it too. By the way, I didn't mean to say meh about the game Metroid. I just meant to say meh about playing something over and over again. I just
Understandable.
Just had to clear that up.
That's true. I love Metroid. But yeah, I mean, I'm an animator, and do a lot of motion graphics type stuff. So I really like all the spiffy transition
Sliding in and out of
animations.
things. Yeah.
Even though I know they annoy some people because they take longer and stuff, but I'm like, ooh, motion parallax and wee.
Is that what it's called? Motion parallax?
Well, there's
Like
there's
an offset movement.
there's like
and stuff.
this.
Jules is doing a little
dimensionality to
show
it
and tell with
stuff.
his
I didn't know
iPad
that
here.
that did that.
You know,
Does
and
your
it's-
phone do that
And
too?
it doesn't really.
If
yeah.
it has the gyrometer and
Yeah.
a
So it's not like.
I think all of them do since 4 have a
Yeah,
gyro.
probably.
So it really doesn't do anything except
It was a,
kinetically. I think I enjoy it, but I know it
yeah.
bothers. some
Android
people.
already did that though. The
Yeah,
parallax.
yeah, the parallax thing. So whatever. Yeah,
Parallax.
Most of,
It's not just a bad guy in Green Lantern anymore.
that's right.
Jordan.
Most of the cool
is
new features are
parallax.
things that have been around in other operating systems for a long time. So it's not like that exciting. Okay, cool, great.
But it looks cool, and I'm glad everything got rid of that bevel. I've done a lot of design for stuff in
iOS.
iPad and iOS over the years, and I'm really happy to see everything get rid of that plastic sheen.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really kind of tired of that, so that's kind of neat.
Yeah. John.
What
how
about
was-
you, John
Yeah,
Holt?
what's new to you?
Well, so as we briefly touched upon last week, at the office we got a 3D printer. And so we've been 3D printing. One of the guys at work has been printing 20-sided die pretty consistently, and he's getting good at it. He's figuring it out, like all the difficulty. And so that's sort of become our benchmark.
Why is it? I don't understand why he continues to do it. Isn't one enough?
Well,
what's the?
Basically, we're kind of like, all right, this is what we want to do. He's trying to do one for a game he's designing, like with specific like
Symbols.
icons and symbols
Okay.
and text on the faces. But there's also like there's overhang. There's like all these little things you have to kind of figure out. And
Now, when you say figure out, is it figure out within the 3D model, or figure out while you're printing it?
a little
Or
bit of both. I mean,
it's
the
a
model's
finicky-
kind of figured out. It's more like fine tuning. Like, how do we get high quality detail print on something that is physical and require like it's got two heads, so it prints two different colors, and it's just everything has to be aligned just right.
So you're saying this 3D printer's crappy?
No,
No, it's really
what we're
good.
finding
Let's say
is
it's fussy. It's a
the
fussy
model
machine.
itself has to be configured a certain way
Right,
too.
like it's really right now we're still kind of in the troubleshooting phase, but it's printing lots of cool stuff. We've downloaded some models.
What's
that
the best thing that you've printed?
I personally have been also learning Cinema 4D, so that's sort of
Cool.
my thing in there. And
I got a neat Cinema 4D story
oh,
after this.
cool. So I've been making asteroids because
The video game character asteroids?
no Pac-Man asteroids. No asteroid. Was that the
What's
sound?
the sound?
These are the cool sounds that
We're multimedia over here. Is that the sound of the 3D printer?
Yeah,
Yeah, it sounds like it makes those sounds. So like
It makes
That
Cool.
sounds like
Hear that.
nothing.
it
like-
makes cool little like sounds. It's pretty cool.
So I've been printing asteroids to use with my Star Wars miniatures games that I talked about last week, but also kind of practicing playing with Cinema 4D. So it's sort of dual thing. One, getting myself used to the tools. Two, seeing how organics and different like
So
odd
Cinema
shaped print-
4D is new to you too this week then.
So I've been playing with it for a couple weeks now, and I'm kind of getting there.
The modeling end?
Modeling specifically. So I've been modeling first those like organics, playing with like shapes and how to throw these things together to make stuff, and then now modeling the TARDIS, trying to make something structural and architectural. And
Well, that should be about the easiest model you could make.
I mean that's the thing, but I'm trying to then get in and like bevel edges and just try to like really sculpt something, fine tune it, and also try to make it work at a certain shit. Like I just downloaded some blueprints or whatever, so it's sort of like how do I get something boxy, and then I'll move into doing something like maybe an ad or something that's a little more like complicated and surface like crazy based on someone else's pre-existing design. And then I'll start sort of saying, okay, well, I'm getting to the tools where now I'm comfortable working on one of my own designs within this thing.
Do you know what you're going to do when you're ready?
No, I don't know. I'll figure it out. Maybe I may, make some template toy things or, game figure stuff.
That's
for
cool.
Fun. So kind of see.
Well, you've been sculpting those little characters for your D&D stuff for a long time.
And those
that
are
might
very
be
much
fun.
more like Kid Robot-y style, like blank slate stuff.
Well, I love those little guys you make.
those
That's
are
some of my
fun.
favorite stuff you do.
And those are mostly painting too. There's not much sculpt to them.
Well, Cinema 4D is actually a pretty user-friendly software as far as I'm concerned, as far as 3D is concerned. And so there's a funny story with that in that when I went to community college in Tennessee, I was lucky enough to get into the art program there that was run by a lady named Ann Powers, who's a very talented artist, and I learned great deals from her. And some of our good close friends went to school with me there, Jason Plapp, our good friend, and Jason Gallagher. Yep. And the whole time we were there, we were just like we were the art department with her. We were kind of, and it was just the cusp of getting good to use 3D software. It was the late 90s where it was like you could use Silicon Graphics, which has a really high bar of entry, or you could use some really low-end stuff like Strata Studio Pro, or just the beginning of 3D Max.
Yeah. Those are
and so at that time, we were just kind of making it up as we went along. We wanted to learn this stuff, but there weren't any classes. So, so then we graduated, went on art school. Later on, I found out that our teacher from that time period, Ann Powers, writes a lot of the books for Studio 4D. Cinema 4D.
Wow.
She's the like tester and it's really I was super proud to read that one.
That's awesome.
When I found out, yeah.
That's cool.
And she's a really nice person, so there you go.
Very cool. Have you been in touch with her?
Briefly on Facebook, so
Kind of howdy stuff.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, yeah.
So let's get to it. Let's get on
cracking.
these fall. It's fall out there.
So we talked we talked briefly about it last week, and sort of that. And our picks sort of last week evoked mostly like not youth, but sort of school youth. Like
What kind of made you say, what do I think of when I think of fall? And
Right.
for Mary, it was going back to school. For you, it was kind of spooky, Twilight kind of stuff.
And it for me still tied into school. Like there's that sort of reading. This wasn't reading for summer kind of thing. This is library reading, where you'd kind of read it with a group, with friends, that kind of stuff. And so that's where that kind of fall stuff. And then I'm a huge proponent of Halloween, and we, like me and Jules, grew up in the Northeast, where we have pumpkin picking and apple picking, and
we have apple picking in Tennessee.
it's not the same, Keith. You have crab apple picking, which is very different. No, you have real apples.
We had an
too.
apple tree in my yard.
But you would go hayride out at pumpkin patches, and
No, I will say,
an
having
apple.
done it in Massachusetts and having done it in Tennessee, it is really much more magical in Massachusetts.
Yeah, it's a lot
And,
more autumny.
yeah.
Up here.
and also, for the fall too, you also have like we would go to Plymouth Plantation because it's 15 minutes away from the school or whatever. You would have field trips down there, and you would have to learn about pilgrims and see all that stuff. And usually that was in the fall, right around October, November. You had Ren fairs around that time, so those were always outside and in the fall. And all those elements.
That means Renaissance fairs for all you uninitiated out there.
So, and those are all out in the trees, and the leaves are turning. You have that New England fall. That's, people talk about Vermont and that New England turning of the trees. up Virginia up, it sort of just like sweeps through.
I've been to lots of places in this country, and it fall's beautiful in almost all of them. Especially, growing up in Tennessee, it was very beautiful in the fall too. So,
So
just not as cold.
He's awesome. He's pumping. His engine block is thumping. He's a choo-choo man. I'm on the track. Choo-choo man. He's the choo-choo man.
with us to beautiful New England as our VistaVision camera fills the screen with the gorgeous panorama of its scenic splendors. For this is that perfect moment in time when the magic wand of autumn touches its rolling historic hills and transforms them into a veritable wonderland of dazzling color. Here we find the Indian summer that the Pilgrims gloried in. For now, even as in that long distant day, Mother Nature offers its bounty for the thankful eyes of those fortunate enough to share it. In the charming little villages, living with the heirlooms of their storied past.
So my pick is The Trouble with Harry, and a big part of the reason I chose this is because my idea of fall is the New England fall specifically. Like, to me, that's fall. I also grew up my earlier years in France, and I feel like, fall was, there were, like, leaves turned brown, and it was still that transitional season, and I think for me there, it was more about back to school. That was really what defined it. I feel like fall is a more specific, like a more clearly defined season culturally in the States in general, because like Halloween is such a big thing here, and it's kind of starting to become a bigger thing in Europe, but it's really like an American.
Yeah, but there's a lot of harvest stuff in Europe, correct? Isn't there a lot of harvest festivals?
Well, Oktoberfest is a big
kind of. I guess maybe there just wasn't in the region where I grew up.
Okay.
Because I was, it was kind of more. It was out like an hour outside of Paris, so it was just kind of a commuter town. There wasn't a strong cultural
Kind of
presence
suburby.
for fall. So it wasn't until I moved to New England where
The magic happened.
Exactly, and I really do think the falls here are pretty stunning. The like fall foliage here is really specific, and that the imagery in The Trouble with Harry, the 1955 Alfred Hitchcock film, it's like it's like an idyllic version of that. It's like just
Well, it's kind of funny because they went up to Vermont
yeah.
to shoot, and by the time they got there, all the leaves had fallen off the trees. So they glued leaves on the trees for the outdoor shot.
No kidding.
Yeah,
Really?
Yeah, and spread leaves around.
Oh my gosh.
And
they're also plagued by rain.
yeah, so it
during the
rained
shoot.
most of the time. So they shot it for the most part in a gym in the high school in Vermont. And
There was a set on the line.
yeah, and because the rain was constant and loud, most of the audio had to be like fixed in post.
Well, there's definitely a few shots where I can see the ADR. But let's talk a little bit more about it, Jules. What about it?
So what's neat is I guess so it's interesting to see it. Like, it is a very manufactured, very recreated look of fall, which is maybe why it's so like stereotypically perfect fall, because they really ended up having to craft it that way. But it really doesn't feel. There's a few sequences where it really feels fake, but there's a bunch where it feels like totally legit,
Like a real town, yeah.
So maybe they had like enough establishings and wides. Like I'm sure all of it wasn't.
Well, the whole opening sequence is just full of just beautiful.
I don't know. Maybe they
exterior
had, maybe they
shots.
did, maybe it's all fake. I don't know.
They may
But
have. I
it's
guess.
very-
I guess what I'm saying is like they maybe shot some establishes.
They
that
might have been
were
a second
beautiful.
unit team that got there
Right.
in time to
I
catch
mean, there's
Or
there's,
after.
there's enough very convincing like wide shots that I didn't notice while I was watching it. It was only like reading up on it after the fact. But and I actually hadn't seen the movie, so I kind of picked it, so it was new to me.
Oh wow! When you recommended this, you hadn't seen it.
Yeah, because in a way I kind of wanted to I think everything that I thought of right away, things that I really thought of as fall picks, were just definitely not going to be. I just felt like we're not going to be new to anyone. They were too current and too widely known. So for example, Rushmore was an
That's
obvious
funny.
pick
I was
for me.
I would have recommended Rushmore as well, but I was like, everyone's seen Rushmore.
Right, that was my thought exactly. And there were a few others that were maybe in the same vein, but not quite as blatant. But in the end, I just kind of wanted to reach a little deeper. And this is a Hitchcock film, but it's a little-known Hitchcock film.
It's true. I consider myself a pretty big fan of Hitchcock. I'd never seen this.
Yeah.
Well,
And-
it bombed pretty hard. Not terrible, but it fizzled. It didn't do great. And then it just didn't air for a while. Hitchcock actually purchased the rights back, and pretty much sat on it for about 30 years until it got released, re-released on VHS and then DVD. By Warner, when they started putting out Vertigo and some of these other movies of Hitchcock's, which was I think in the late 80s, early 90s or something.
Yeah. Another neat thing about the film is that it stars Shirley MacLaine, and it's actually her first film.
It says introducing Shirley MacLaine right in the credits. Yeah.
And you can see right away, like from her first role, like that she was going to be a big.
I mean,
star.
she won a Golden Globe for this portrayal too.
Really? They had Golden Globes in '55?
Yeah, that's right.
For her, they did.
Yeah, and she is great right off the bat in this film, like Sue.
But she seems so much more Hollywoody in this, just the way she speaks, and it's different than Shirley MacLaine speaks. And
but she already has like like she's definitely already quirky. Like she has a quirky and specific way of acting. And
you
stuff
also get a young Jerry Mathers.
Even younger than the Beav. Yeah,
so this is 2 years prior to his role as the Beaver in Leave It to Beaver.
Oh, that's where I recognize it from. Yeah, and he's
Arnie,
super.
the little kid.
So he's plays Shirley MacLaine's son, and he's super adorable and like very naturalistic. Like he's just a kid.
Well, it opens on him as a little kid. Well, it opens on a little kid who turns out to be Jerry Mathers running through the woods with like a space gun, plastic space gun, and that space gun is so cool. I want one of those exact ones. It was so neat.
That's the other thing that's fun about watching the film is it's very of its time. It's like 1950. Well,
right. Yeah.
It's 1955. I mean, it's got like, it's like small town, but at the same time, it has some like, it's kind of like right in between like early 50s and 60s, where it's like a small town, but at the same time, you've got like the hip artist. You kind of have some people who you can tell like have like maybe escaped, like moved to this sleepy Vermont town to escape their troubled city lives a little bit. There's kind of this undertone of that in a couple of the characters. And also, like you said, like the kids, like Leave It to Beaver-ish. He's got the little laser gun.
Not like, ish. He is Beaver.
Right. So it's got that quaint small townness about it. But at the same time, it's that's subverted by the plot, which is they find this. The whole thing with The Trouble with Harry is that he's dead. So they find, and this happens right at the beginning of the movie. It's in the trailer. It's not like a secret. So
it's on the cover,
right? So
the poster.
They find this dead body, and it's sort of like all the main characters, in one way or another, feel responsible.
Feel like they were the ones that killed him.
Right, like either think they killed him, but they didn't actually, or were part of it, and so they're all
part of the cover up.
Yeah, so all these characters all end up embroiled in it, and that's sort of what drives the story and the characters coming together forward. But it's all very lighthearted in this kind of weird way, and nobody seems to take that seriously. It's more like an inconvenience,
And there's like a level of innocence too, which is kind of funny.
Well, I think it's the opposite of innocence. There's especially with Shirley MacLaine's character, she kind of is like, well, he didn't really love me. It was a weird.
It's like
the whole movie was weird.
Yeah, it's like there's lots of reasons are given why you shouldn't care or like or like Harry, and all the characters are like, well, because of this, like it's no big deal, really. Right. Like, and I think
no one will miss him. I'm just gonna bury him.
Right. I think that's the other thing and so that kind of ties into kind of also the fact that death is such a big part of this movie is also part of what makes it very fall, Halloween-ish, because it is kind of a dark comedy, but it still manages to stay light,
right?
Because everyone is taking this dead thing so lightly.
There's some great quotes. There's Shirley MacLaine kind of talks about how he shows up at her door with that. Did you see his mustache and that wavy hair?
Right.
And he's like, and so he's and then this is to the sort of the male protagonist artist character, and he's like, well, did he look any different, when he was alive? And she's like, he looked exactly the same when he was alive, except he was vertical. Like, that's, just those great lines, and really weird little like obsessions that the characters have, like with each other's age and the sort of like theme of age, and just these sort of weird like avenues and threads of humor.
The four main characters all find their romantic interest during the process of dealing with this body, which in and of itself is an odd
so there's a
thing
younger
too.
So basically there's a younger couple and an older
but they're not a couple when they start.
Right. So there's a younger woman played by Shirley MacLaine and a younger art man who's an artist played by Sam Marlowe, and there's
I think his character is Sam Marlowe, isn't it?
Wait, Sam Marlowe. Isn't that the
or John
detective from...
I'm sorry, John Forsyth.
Yeah, John
Okay.
Plays
plays
Sam Marlowe, who's the
Oh.
artist.
Oh, his name is Sam Marlowe.
Yeah, and then there's
Sam Marlowe, the detective.
and then the other two main characters
by
are
Philip Marlowe.
Mildred Natwick plays Miss Ivy Gravely, who's kind of the town, like she's an older woman and she's kind of
It's like a spinster.
yeah, spinster. That would
Like
be a good word.
not a widower, but it's like a woman who just sort of like probably grew up living with her family, and her family's passed away, and she's just a spinster, right? It's like a woman who is.
Yeah,
They pretty much. I mean, we'll get into this, but they pretty much say she's a virgin.
Yeah.
yeah.
Well,
And then there's-
I mean, it's not even thinly veiled.
That's. I mean, this movie was straight talk.
yeah,
Yeah, but they have these references to sex that are pretty straight, but then they sort of recoil back into this. Oh, we're being coy about
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
Yeah.
And
But it's
then there's-
really different for this era.
And then there's Captain Albert Wiles, played by Edmund Gwenn, who's kind of comes across as this worldly.
He's
Captain.
the best. He's the
Yeah.
best. I mean, just his voice and everything was so great.
Yeah, and so he's supposed to be this more worldly guy who's come to the town later after having traveled the
Retiring.
world. That's kind of what it's implied.
But
And-
he was the guy from Miracle on 34th Street, correct? He was the
Yeah.
Santa Claus from
Yes,
that. Yeah.
yeah.
Which, if you can remember his voice, it's so great.
Even the side character, the guy who played the deputy sheriff,
Oh, he was
Royal
great.
Dano. He was in like Twin Peaks
Really?
later as the judge.
Huh.
He had a great career.
His voice,
He's awesome.
I mean, his face, you can tell. I've seen him on other
he was in
things.
Gunsmoke.
Oh, wow.
I love that character actor. He just looks so unique, and
I didn't like the way they treated his character,
In
but
this
we'll
one?
get into that.
Well, and again, these were all relative unknowns at the time this movie came out, and that was part of what Hitchcock was experimenting with when he made the movie. It was like, well, let's see if we can make a movie with an unknown cast and see how it goes and that sort of thing. So yeah, it was. I ended up really enjoying it. I mean, I think towards the end, it started to get a little like happy endy in a corny kind of way. So it lost me a little bit towards the end, but I mean, overall, it was so light that it didn't really bother me.
think he
Jules,
tried
did you
to
ever
keep
see the
tension.
movie Arsenic and Old Lace?
oh, I
Yes.
love that movie.
Yeah.
This kind of has a feeling like that in
Yeah,
a way,
yeah.
in that it's this kind of like. In the beginning of Arsenic and Old Lace, I believe there's a federal agent that ends up dying, correct? Or there's a criminal that's dead.
Yeah, the two old ladies they always poison these people, but I don't remember.
Oh, that's yeah.
But they're bad
I don't
people.
remember
That's where
who the dead body is.
Yeah, I
and
think
that-
it was like a gangster or something. But this movie kind of feels like that in the kind of the looseness that they have with this. There's by the way, this guy was a living person with
Right.
feelings and a family, etc. It's like they just don't even. It's just so overtrodden
Yeah.
by the mad campness of what to do next.
Yeah.
And it's funny. There's something about the movie. Like sometimes, like some of it feels kind of sophisticated and modern, and then in other ways, it's very like kind of old school. Like like it's the hip, young, like the hip kind of counterculture artist. But then like his first impulse is to like ask Shirley MacLaine to marry him.
Yeah,
Right.
the first time he ever met her, by the way.
Right. Even
Yeah.
though, like, within the first day, even though, like, clearly, like, marriage has not worked out so well for her. So that was one of the, like, weird, like, it seems weird.
It's a very. For me, it was like you have this doddering sort of like talking to himself guy with an accent with a gun walking
Yeah.
through the woods in the fall. It's like
Elmer
it's like
Fudd
an
style.
Elmer Fudd from Wabbit Hunter, and then you have this character, the doctor, who he's that guy who kind of
Yeah.
just walks through the scene
Yeah,
in a
that's
cartoon.
true, that's right.
He's like do 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 do
Yeah.
do do
Oh, we're
do
reading a
do.
book.
And he always has his theme song, and he just kind of trips over like the scene and moves on. And it was just like these are Looney Tunes moments that
Yeah,
he's pulling
yeah.
into this. It's one of Hitchcock's true like this is a comedy that he's making. It's not a like the twin. Even when they get to the tension near the end, it's not that tense,
No.
and there's not much to it. It's sort of like well,
But I feel
are
like-
they going to pay the consequences? Who knows?
So Hitchcock had worked with Cary Grant, obviously, lots of times, and who's the other guy that's in Rear Window?
Jimmy Stewart.
Jimmy Stewart, who are such talented comedians. Some of the best of all time. But in this movie, it's supposed to be a comedy, but nobody does like really comedic.
Yeah, they're all pretty
stuff.
like naturalistic.
Yeah, it's like the situation is kind of comedic, but nobody does the kind of like funny mad camp kind of stuff. It's really dry. I mean, so dry.
Yeah. I think that's part of what I really liked about it.
Yeah, I think so too.
And what made it kind of more timeless in a way. Like it, yeah. I mean, it doesn't. You definitely know it's not a modern film, but it has a timeless quality about it.
I think too, it makes you kind of go, well, what? And these people seem a little bit alien to me. Like they don't quite react like I think they should react. So I don't know what they're gonna do.
Yeah,
like you don't know if Shirley MacLaine's gonna straight up kill this artist guy next. Like that was my kind of thing. Like she might do that,
and it's a Hitchcock movie, so that could have happened.
And
any of those things,
and pulled it off comedically, possibly, just because of the way the characters act and interact. There was like there's
and
just
the
certain,
cop kind of had a creepy vibe about him.
There's
the
just these weird
deputy sheriff that you
weird
thought
little
maybe
twists that were kind of usually never had fruition, but it was just like, man, something could, and maybe that was almost like that diffuse, like the joke is the diffusing of this.
Well, the whole
joke.
time too, you're thinking, oh, in a way like the movie Clue, in that you're like, oh, well, this person didn't kill them, then maybe it's this person. And so you don't really know who killed this guy. So it could have been any of them, and at any minute they could kill somebody else in a way.
Right.
Yeah.
Which I kind of wish it would have gone a little bit in that direction. I don't know. But
it definitely seemed like it's a comedy of errors, and you're expecting the worst thing to happen. Because you're almost like you're cringing at how these people are reacting to this dead body, and so I just keep expecting these terrible things to happen, like it's a Coen Brothers movie or something.
Yeah.
And
well, it's funny you mentioned that the Coen Brothers, because what I was mentioning to Julien before we recorded, I was like, it kind of felt a little like a Wes Anderson movie to me, in that the characters are so peculiar and everyone is so distinctive, and dresses a certain way. Everyone's got their costume, everyone's got their thing. But
it also had, like, I think he often apes that movies from that time period in terms of
without a doubt,
look and style. Like it's just got that very colorful, like,
it's a Technicolor.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, Hitchcock almost got smashed by a Technicolor camera in this while making this movie.
And for a little context, like right before this movie, he made Rear Window in '54 and To Catch a Thief the same year.
Oh wow!
And then The Man Who Knew Too Much was right after Trouble with Harry. So I feel
crazy.
like this was really like a break for him. In the middle of these kind of like bigger, heavier films. And
can't believe the schedule this guy must have been keeping. Good.
Yeah, busy guy.
So I actually kind of am interested to read. This is based on a novel by Jack Trevor Story.
I'm interested in it.
And I kind of want to read that to see what the tone, like how much he held on to the tone of the characters, or how much the actors brought their tone to it. I want to kind of see how the dark comedy was written initially.
All right. Well, you do
Jules,
that.
did you ever see the movie Dogtown?
I'm not sure.
It's got Nicole Kidman. It all takes place like on a stage, but it's supposed to be in a town.
That's a heavy movie.
I really wish that movie was filmed like this in a real town. I think it would have made a big difference.
Well, I think that was based on a play, and the play was done that way with like no set, and that was a big part of it. Yeah, I agree. But it was amazing. Like the performances were so good that you did kind of end up forgetting about the fact that there was no setting in that.
I never forgot it, but I did accept it.
Yeah, I mean,
you made your peace with it.
Yeah.
I was able to forget about it and just get wrapped up in the characters and the stories. But
I wanted to point out one little like moment that I highlighted was they are trying to bury Harry at some point, and there are people that they're worried about coming by, like the deputy sheriff, and they say they have to bury him with hasty reverence.
Yeah, there's a lot of
there's just like great turns of phrase in this movie that are, whether some of them are like bold-faced sexual things and unabashed, sort of like, so did you get with him, or
like what did you ask him for? a double bed.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's called The Trouble with Harry.
Yeah, from 1955.
Little known Alfred Hitchcock classic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. Well, I mean, can you call it, if it's little known, can you call it a classic? I don't know. It's an old movie from...
I think it's
very
pretty well.
fall-
It's still like kind of well guarded.
Absolutely beautifully
and
shot, too.
and fantastic.
Yeah.
I mean, music is really cool.
They have an apple cider stand in it.
Uh-huh.
So
It's probably the most obviously fall pick of our
Yeah.
picks too.
Yeah,
'Cause it's
nailed
true.
it.
Yeah.
so fall.
So my pick
Wasn't very
is
autumn,
jumping
though.
into a pile of leaves. Take that, Jules.
Well, thanks, Jules.
No problem. Yes.
All right.
The trouble with Harry is that he's dead, and one of these real nice people could have caused that trouble. Perhaps the sweet old sea captain, who actually wasn't a very good shot. Or the New England spinster, who would go to any lengths to defend her honor. Or the enchanting redhead, who had been Harry's unkissed bride. Or the unconventional artist, who was mad about Harry's widow. Or the bum who needed a new pair of shoes. Or the nearsighted surgeon who liked to read poetry out loud. Yes, the unconventional Mr. Hitchcock has done it again, just as he did with Rear Window, playing a most unusual story against a new and different background. And the only trouble is, you won't stop laughing at The Trouble with Harry.
Good afternoon, good afternoon, good afternoon. Good afternoon, boys and girls. When I say good afternoon, like Walter say good afternoon, Mr. Cheesecake. Good afternoon, boys and girls. Now, Mr. Punch is ready to come upstairs. Let's give him a nice big Royal Norfolk show cheer for Mr. Punch. A nice cheer when he comes up. He's not loud enough. He wants a big cheer. Such a good show. What is it, Mr. Punch? I can't come. I'm making a cup of tea. Oh, I come upstairs and see the boys and girls. Here I come. I was making a lovely cup of tea. Oh, hello, everybody. I'm Mr. Punch's wife.
Again, I often explain why these are tough to pick certain things, but this one was a tough one for me as well. And now that I look back over the last 2 weeks, we didn't do a single record, so that a single album musically, and that's kind of too bad because I have a lot of great records that make me think of the autumn. Let me just throw a couple out there real quick. The Alligator by The National always makes me think of fall, and It's a Shame About Ray by the Lemonheads always makes me think about fall. So we should have talked about that maybe. But instead, I'm going to talk about a graphic novel by two masters, in my opinion, Neil Gaiman and Dave McKean. These guys have teamed up time and time again, always with, in my opinion, always with success. I haven't ever seen those guys get together and make something subpar. John tweaked his eyebrows just there.
We'll find exception.
Yeah, though he's the biggest Sandman fan I've ever seen.
I do like Sandman.
So this is a book called the Comical Tragedy or the Tragical Comedy of Mr. Punch, and it's produced by
It's a Vertigo.
Vertigo, yeah, back in the day when Vertigo was kicking it.
So is this 88 or 98?
I don't. I think it was it was in the 90s. I don't think it was 98 either. I think it was.
Yeah, it's definitely a book from a post-Photoshop world.
But this was one of McKean's very first forays into Photoshop ever. And a lot of it is not Photoshop even. A lot of it's just photos, yeah. But anyway, I can't find the date, but I think it's it's 98 or 99 because I was in school, I believe, when it came out. But anyway, it's a simple story.
1995.
95. There we go.
Wikipedia says 94.
There we go.
Just the white spacing kind of makes it hard to read.
Got it. Well, there are differing opinions about when it, but in the book itself, it's printed 1995. So I'm going to go with that. Suck it, Wikipedia.
That's your edition.
Yeah,
Ouch.
there you go.
Wait, so when was the original print?
Just a year before, 1994.
It's a simple kind of it's kind of an interesting story. It meanders into some dreams, some memories. It's our storyteller is kind of remembering back to when he was younger, hanging out with his grandfather, going fishing, I mean, there's a lot I can go into in the story. I thought the story's really nice. It rounds out really nicely. But to me, the graphics are all about what makes this book really good. And if you listen to this podcast, if you have in the past or if you continue to, you will know that Dave McKean is one of my all-time favorites. I mean, the guy's a master. He's just I don't think in the world of comics there's anyone as innovative or great as him. There are lots of people close, but he's really set the standard in my opinion. But when you think of autumn, when I think of autumn, I think of change. I think of the end of summer, which is so full of light and brightness, and we're going into a dark time, and that transition, and there's all these emotions and memories that come with that theme, and I think that this book is just filled with them. A story about looking back with loss, and but the kicker, the through story in this is that the story, part of it revolves around a Mr. Punch puppet theater, and we here in the States don't know an awful lot about Mr. Punch. I certainly only know what I do know, which is not much, based on researching it after this book. But Mr. Punch is it goes way back. It's a really popular old puppet show, and it's super violent, and kids and people would travel from town to town with these little tents, and they would set up a little puppet show of Mr. Punch, and in the story, Mr. Punch, I mean, it's been going on for years and years, and it has changed, and there are different iterations. But in a really common version, he basically gets out of all of his trouble by just bashing everything.
Right. It's almost a satire of a mystery play.
Oh, really?
Sort of. I mean, because you think about it, like a mystery play is usually was sort of they're either showing you, like a Bible story straight up, or they're telling you a tale, like a moral tale. And, the devil gets them in the end if they do the bad things. And Mr. Punch
just bashes through that. He doesn't like his baby, he kills his baby. He doesn't like his wife, he kills his wife. Right. He goes to the
hanging judge.
He just beats up the hanging judge.
Or he tricks the hanging judge into putting his own neck in the noose,
right.
And then he hangs him himself.
And he eventually even outsmarts the devil. But within this book, it's a multimedia explosion. There's just amazing, interesting, moody photographs that go into really interesting, moody illustrations that go into my favorite part, which is the Mr. Punch part of the story, in that he's built these just grotesque little puppets, and in the way that they're shot, it's just so moody and spooky, and I just love it. I just think it's the best. But there's not an awful lot that I can say about it other than, go to the comic book shop, thumb through it, see what you think. And if you agree with me, you'll probably buy it just because it's just so beautiful. And that's about it. I discovered this in school. I think maybe my friend Jace probably turned me on to it, or we might have discovered it at the same time. I know my pal Jace turned me on to Dave McKean, so he might have turned me on to this one, or I might have already known about Dave McKean and picked this one up myself. Who knows? Though I did buy him cages for his birthday one year, so I don't know. But that's all I'm going to say about it for now. What did people think about it who might have only just now seen this for the first time?
Well, I was already familiar with it, and I think I was introduced to Dave McKean and Neil Gaiman around the same time. And I really enjoyed it. But I have wanted to start with a question. Why did you pick this for fall?
I don't know if it's that I remember it because when I first read it, it was fall. But there's something about the mood of this that reminds me of fall. It's a little it's got like a little ghost story, mysterious feel to it.
Yeah.
And everything's so dark, and it talks about them going out fishing really late, really early, and it's dark, and you know, all those things. And the kid's always talking about getting his coat or his sweater. Yeah. Just a lot of these things really just remind me of it's not winter time because it's not that cold.
Right.
So it just feels like autumn by the sea.
Yeah,
and I think in
true.
the very beginning he says they're going fishing in the late summer. So.
Oh yeah.
And then it progresses. So.
And it has like you kind of brought up the Something Wicked This Way Comes, that sort of like harvest fair kind of feel where you basically, it's like that nostalgic carnival where you don't quite think of it being in the summer. You kind of think of like the circus comes to town in the fall.
Yeah.
And and that's, we don't have them anymore, but that's where you'd have like your freak shows and your sort of like performance.
Where I grew up, the county fair always basically signals the beginning of autumn, and usually happens in August, and that's up, time to go back to school. County fair's here.
Right.
Yeah. No, it's true. I mean, it definitely, like, I wasn't. I just wanted to hear how you felt about it, but it definitely even in the color palette, it's all like kind of reddish and like rusty colored, or mixed, or very cool, bluish colors. So it totally feels like fall for sure, but it's not like it doesn't hit you over the head.
Yeah. Also, it deals with aging and like letting go of an aging.
Dying,
And all those things I associate with, death with winter, but the aging with autumn. Even people say they're in autumn years of their life. It means they're older.
Yeah. No, and I definitely. I like Dave McKean and Neil Gaiman, but I'm not like as big of a fan as a lot of people I know. It's not always a slam dunk for me, but I do think that this collaboration was totally great, and it really at first I really thought that the same person had done the words and pictures. Like I thought maybe Dave McKean had written this one. Like that's how close they feel together.
Right, so tied.
And it's so Dave McKean, like you mentioned, is very multimedia, and he mixes all kinds of different stuff together. And again, like sometimes it goes a little too far for me, but I think again in this book he just struck the balance, and it really feels as one thing. And the parts that are photographic, like just kind of give it this like kind of creepy surrealism.
Yeah, big time.
And he also does so much with typography.
Yeah.
And he actually, it says in the credits that he co-designed a typeface for the book.
Yeah.
So he really goes deep in crafting everything about the book. And one really nice touch that I love is that there's hand painted word bubbles that where he they're basically
just
brush
a big white
strokes.
blob. Yeah.
It's like a textured brush stroke with text on top, and there's a lot of aesthetic things like that to me are just lovely. I really really liked it a lot.
And it's another one. A lot of the comics that I love and have grown up with haven't aged very well. The prime example is The Return of the Dark Knight, or Dark Knight Returns. In fact, I love that comic, but gosh, when I read it again, it just makes me cringe some of it. But this book here, I feel like has aged very well. Even the book that they collaborated on far before this, which is one of my favorites as well, Arkham Asylum, which is a Batman story. Even it hasn't aged as well as this. I think that this holds water still.
Yeah, I think part of it is that it's not a superhero story. It's kind of a, first of all, it's like the character is remembering in the past, and and it deals with big themes, and it also because it's so dreamlike, and the prose is so sort of poetic, and the prose really you almost could just write it without pictures, and it would almost feel like.
I bet it probably was.
Yeah, by comics standards, it's more book-like than than some, right?
Yeah, I think too, because if you look at like Arkham Asylum is a little more, I mean, it deals with madness more, so it's a little more surreal and expressive in moments where, and that's almost wall to wall like that. So it's a little, whereas this one has multiple tones. It deals with madness, it deals with memory, it deals with death, it deals with like dreamlike memory, real memory. Like there's those different levels of sort of when you're thinking back on something,
of
and
reality.
There's moments that are crisp in your mind and memory. There are moments that are twisted by like your felt filters now, or just by time, and so it gives you this sense of that sort of like flickering kind of like, you know, old penny arcade of like looking at an image and looking at memory, and it's sort of broken and
distorted photo kind of thing.
And it works for that to give across all the different ideas and tones and times that the narrator is giving.
Sorry,
you.
why are you comparing it to Arkham Asylum?
They both Neil Gaiman and Dave McKean did that as well.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
And
Thanks.
it's also like the way the story is told is a bit disjointed and non-linear, and kind of in the way someone would tell it, you know, because you like think of one thing and it reminds you of something else.
Sends
like,
you on to
it
a
feels
tangent.
a bit more
Yeah.
stream of consciousness,
right.
and so it takes a while to like pick up the thread in a way, which is kind of neat.
And there's an arc to it, but it's very subdued and underneath. And I think that's kind of nice too, that you kind of have to work to find the arc and the underlying structure. It's not overly done or overly apparent, and there's a couple little surprises that are kind of Gaiman standards or whatever. But
Well, I think that there's, you know, in a lot of the books in a lot of the comics that we've covered on this show in the past have been this weird surreal kind of thing. But I feel like this has a lot more of a rewarding, has some closure to it more than some of the other ones. Some of the other ones are almost just surreal, and it's just like, well, it could end or it couldn't, you know, who knows. You know, this to me is, it's wrapped up nicely, I feel like, at the end. What about you, Mary? What'd you think?
I think it's really cool. I had no idea Mr. Punch was a real thing, though. So you telling me that kind of takes some of the cool factor out of the story for me a little bit, because I thought he made up these crazy puppets. But that's also cool to know. Now I want to know more about this weird puppet show.
Well, there was even a like one of the oldest humor periodicals ever. It was called Punch, and it was based on him. It was in England.
Like satirical.
Cool.
I also think like I think in the US, like Punch and Judy, like it's termed that way because Judy's like the other character, the wife character. And I feel like that's an expression or something. Like Punch and Judy is something I'd heard and recognized.
Yeah,
Yeah, I heard that
they might
before.
kind of use it to, maybe they use it to describe that sort of like man and wife sitcom
Abusive,
situation,
maybe.
where it's like the, you know, like pow to the moon Alice kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like not actual violence usually, but I don't know. That's sort of an interesting thing that I have to look up a little bit.
Yeah,
but-
I think it is used to define a genre or something. But anyways, go on, Mary.
Yeah, just I think it's really cool. I'd never read anything fully illustrated by Dave McKean. I've just seen his covers on Neil Gaiman stuff. So that was really cool. And so in the covers that he does that I'm familiar with, it's more of the photo collage stuff. So, which is in this book, but also he has so much of the illustration of the characters, so I had never really seen that. So that was really cool.
Well, he's been doing great interior stuff for a long time. In fact, if this interests you, you should check out the Arkham Asylum. It is,
Oh, cool.
in my opinion, the best Batman graphic novel. It is so good, and it holds up pretty well. I mean, color wise, there's some flubs in it.
Did he do Black Violet? Or
Black Orchid.
Black Orchid, yeah.
They did a short miniseries of Black Orchid. Another one called Violin Cases, I believe. They did together. It's really beautiful.
Oh, cool.
Did he, was it just McKean or The Day I Traded My Dad for Two Goldfish?
I believe that was
Both
McKean,
of them.
but that's a children's book. Yeah. But that's more painting.
He's got some photo collage in there too.
Oh, possibly, yeah. But I mean,
Yeah.
just if you wanted to get into his kind of comic book.
Yeah.
Stuff.
Yeah, I think I have a better appreciation for him now because I'm kind of not super crazy about the covers. Maybe I've just seen them a lot, but they just are really collagey and have that thing. I mean, I don't hate them or anything,
Right.
but I'm just kind of like, I don't know if I could read a whole book of this.
Yeah.
But so I didn't realize it wasn't just that, It was
I always wondered why he didn't do more stuff. I mean, other than just the covers on Sandman, even just the odd issue here and there. I would love
I
for
think
him to have
it was
done.
probably more of a turnaround thing where for him,
Probably.
he could do the cover, maybe like a splash page.
Thinking back, I don't know of any kind of periodical comics he's ever done. I've only ever seen him do kind of the bigger graphic novels.
I mean, that's Alex Ross kind of gets into that too.
Yeah.
Another sort of like specialty.
Yeah, I think they're both. I mean, he's kind of interesting in that he really. It feels like he's an illustrator.
Yeah.
That then did comics rather than a comic artist.
Right.
yeah, he's kind of treating the whole page and it's not like the white borders and then he's just drawing within the panel, he's treating the whole page and I think that really the way he does it too lends itself to the story being from memory because it's like this black page with illustrations laid out in a nice way on it. And like you said with the type and everything.
And that's a little bit because there's Sankiewicz who does, and he did full books.
Yep.
And then,
But not an awful lot
That's
either.
true too. And then there's Ted McKeever, who also did
Eddie Kern.
full books, and Eddie Kern, yeah.
Yeah. So
Well, Ted McKeever did
Did
Eddie Kern.
yeah.
yeah, they really treat it as like an oeuvre or whatever, like it's like a finished thing from start to finish.
Right.
And it's not like they, I think, wouldn't be able to do the thing, like be a rotating artist in a longer series, or it'd be a lot harder because they're, I mean, in a way, because their style is so specific
Right.
and
Yeah.
so like different. And I think a lot of times, like the reason I was saying it's not always a slam dunk for me is I think it really worked in this story because of the dreamlike quality of it. I think when it's a more like traditional comic narrative, I feel like that kind of stylization or like more detailed,
definitely
like
agree
textured,
with you on
painted
that.
thing gets in the way of the story for me. Makes it less iconic and less legible.
Right.
It's almost like if you had
It's
to
not
read-
doing its work.
Yeah, it's kind of like if you had to read a whole book that had like crazy hand-done typography, it would get kind of tiring, and it gets in the way of like just
Right.
losing yourself in the story.
Well, I think that's why the Black Orchid book does work as a comic, because that little short bit that he did there was a very introspective. It's a superhero, but it's not. I mean, it's more about someone who's going through this Kafka-esque transformation.
Yeah.
And it's not. It just happens to be a superhero. So it's sort of one of those stories that, it's it's something that we understand, but we're taking it out of the context a little bit and telling it in a different artistic way. Some people do that in the traditional medium perfectly well, like Alan Moore with the Swamp Thing series that he did. Just was rife with that sort of psychedelica and.
Well, I feel like
strangeness.
McKean does that best. That's why he does more covers than anything else, because what he excels at is the intangible kind of surreal stuff. That's why, I mean, not to get too deep into the Arkham Asylum book, but there's a lot of that in there, and that's one of the reasons why he was such a good choice for it. It's because there's so much of it is Batman dealing with, wait a second, I'm just as crazy as these guys actually. Why am I doing this kind of thing?
Right.
He's like, I consider myself a pretty sane guy, but I dress up like a bat every night and go to fight these crazy guys. Like, am I just as crazy as them? So it's that's another great recommendation. That's a great book.
But yeah, so the Comical Tragedy or Tragical Comedy of Mr. Punch by Dave McKean and Neil Gaiman. Gaiman.
Gaiman. Either way.
Garmin. Just
Not Garmin.
But so yeah,
But you would be happy to know, I think Neil Gaiman wrote Doctor Who recently.
he's written a
so
couple
you'd be-
episodes of Doctor
yeah.
Who. We'll see. Maybe we'll do a New to Who special series.
You keep threatening this.
Oh yes, it will happen. So yeah, Keith, I think it was a great pick. I really enjoyed reading it.
Good.
Yeah.
And now that it's autumn, we'll be taking the train more. You guys could read it on the subway.
That's right.
Or
Speak for yourselves. Biking forever.
That's right. Autumn's the best time to ride.
I rode here tonight.
It's not just for children, this show. I'll get them wrong. Come on, 1, 2, 3. We've only had one kiss here, now we've got a baby, ain't that light? No, not her. Ah. Here he is. No, not her. Ah. Big ah. It's a lovely baby. Yes, it's a lovely baby. A beautiful baby. A beautiful baby. A smelly baby. A smelly baby. A what?
Such a question, there are many possible answers, such as hard work.
Feel I'm alone in this whole of existence. I know it takes time, but I'm losing my persistence. The distance is too far to fetch, so I sketch on pages and hope that some catch the thoughts of my inverted worded music. No trial and error, just emotion when I do this. Focus on each beat more so than you wasting time.
so Mr. Punch, or the Comical Tragedy, Comical Tragedy or Tragical Comedy of Mr. Punch from 1995. You can find, or 94. You can find a paper.
It makes me wonder if it maybe came out in 94 in England. 'cause
I
they're
think that
both
might be what
English
it
guys.
is.
But you can find a trade paper release from Vertigo, from DC's Vertigo imprint.
Yeah.
And then The Trouble with Harry
Yeah,
by Alfred Hitchcock, 1955.
Which you can rent on,
Yes, on iTunes.
iTunes.
Man, I was excited to see how many old movies they have on iTunes. That was great.
Yeah.
Really good copies of them too. I mean, this one was beautiful.
I feel like even like as Netflix and Hulu like have their selections that have been sort of shrinking, iTunes continues to expand, so that's kind of good.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's sort of like,
Yeah,
hey,
but
we
it's
can
not free
monetize.
streaming.
So,
Or not subscriptions.
yeah. So, but at least they're available digitally somehow.
Yeah, that's good.
so
Well,
we're-
and you know, it's like $2.99 to rent.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
For standard definition.
Yeah.
Which
and-
looks exactly the same in my eyes.
Really? Even on your nice big projector?
Yeah, I honestly have a hard time telling the
well,
difference.
he
I
does.
didn't know
He
that.
does project it on a bunch of old stapled together pizza boxes, so that could have something to
and
do
he
with
doesn't
it.
wear his glasses the whole time.
Not true. Not true.
But you know, $2.99 is not too much to pay
No.
for.
No, for a rental, not at all.
Yeah.
Yeah. So fall. Do you guys think we hit it? So we
Well, I just got to put this out there is that maybe in the future we'll do a Halloween one because I wouldn't say that any of our picks were necessarily Halloween.
I
that
think
we would have other
this was
picks for that.
Well, John's was.
this was definitely fall.
Ghost
I think
Stories.
we were kind of aiming for like a more general season
yeah.
feel. So maybe next week maybe we'll try for scary / Halloween.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean,
dark.
maybe we just save that for next year. I don't know.
See how it goes.
Yeah.
But definitely
Stay tuned for a whole year.
Yeah.
But definitely no seasonal music because for some people music just isn't seasonal, right, Mary?
Oh, right. We had a behind the scenes argument about, not an argument, just a
Discussion.
discussion about how I don't associate any music with any season.
And we're all like, "What do you mean?"
And I'm like, what do you mean you do associate any
It's like
season?
obviously cold December's from the winter.
But you guys argue too.
And
Like you
summertime
said
rolls
that
is from the summer.
you said that Shame About Ray is fall, and then John said no, that's summer.
It
Well, I mean, it's all
depends.
personal.
Yeah.
It's all subjective.
Yeah, but that's
And I
but
think it's by it's
even
via
if-
song too.
Even if we don't agree, we all can associate a song with a season.
But there's a difference between associating it to the time that you listen to it and actually saying this sound, like hearing it for the first time and saying, "Oh, this sounds kind of."
No, I think it's about
wintry."
saying, wow, every time I hear this album, it reminds me of October.
Well, that's a different
I think
thing.
there's
yeah.
a feel. I mean, I do agree that.
And that's going to be completely personal to you and not apply to anybody else.
Yeah,
Still,
well, I mean, that's
but
what
still
this
would have
is
been a
about.
legitimate fall.
But there
pick
is
for Keith.
an
Sure.
evocation. All right, it's a shame about Ray specifically. The cover has a car in a leaf-strewn, like New England glade, with leaves falling off the trees, and the tone is sort of it is evocative of the fall.
But no,
Really
you have
is.
to define that better. What does that mean? It's evocative of the
It's
fall.
got
The themes of transition.
Are there
and
sound
change
effects of leaves crunching?
and being
What-
and just wanting a bit part in your life
of things dying.
Juliana Hatfield.
Yeah.
So the lyrics.
Yeah, the Blake babies are more summer.
Yeah, definitely.
The lyrics, I'd say the tone, because a lot of the other Lemon's Head stuff is more like punky and like kind of, and that's it's different. It's a different.
Yeah, but
feel.
why can punky not be fall? Like
I
that.
think-
That's when you talk
I
about
think
these.
that there's. I guess the thing is like in the fall, I associate that more with like a little bit of like nostalgic melancholia, and it's a shame about Ray has that tone to it.
Even when
Whereas-
it first came out, it felt like we're looking back to
right, and with summer, it's either sort of like upbeat or sort of like just
Breezy.
slow, like breezy, or like
stopping and smelling the roses.
Yeah, or just like hanging out on the porch or driving real slow down the beach or whatever.
Wait,
like,
hanging out on the porch and driving slow is summer?
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
like
Basically any Jack Johnson record.
yeah, like stuff. So it's either sort of like peppy. Spring is the real like pep in your step. kind
Wait,
of-
hanging out on
easy.
the porch is not peppy though. That's slow
no,
and
But I'm
boring.
saying there's two sort of moments in summer
Yeah, yeah.
that you can
you
get.
can have Smash Mouth,
right,
which is kind of like hanging out on the porch, drinking beers.
right,
You know, or you can have Jack Johnson, which is I'm gonna go surfing or swimming.
right.
Yeah, like
All my friends
in the summertime.
have a low rider is a summer song.
And so for spring, you would want stuff, talking about rain or, things
Well,
that evoke
You don't
new
want sad,
growth.
but you don't want sad rain songs. That's more like fall.
you guys
I
can't
don't
see
know.
Mary's eyes rolling, but they are. Oh, they are.
You can hear it. You can hear
think
them eyes rolling.
Winter-wise, it's hard to find winter ones. I'd say there are definitely some Rush albums that
No
evoke
way, there's
winter.
plenty of great record
Christmas
albums.
music.
Well, see, but Christmas, like,
Any
you can't go too
Scorpion album
easy.
is Christmas.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, is winter.
Anything with
Yeah.
bells in it.
Well, I'd say like AC/DC's pretty spring, like big balls and
That's the kind
That's
of for any
subjective.
season.
Yeah.
Right. That's for any season.
I don't know. Mary, come on now.
Come on,
Shaking my
Counting
head.
Crows.
Yeah.
That's totally winter time.
No,
Counting
see, you were
Crows-
saying
Oh,
summer
there's a lot of
earlier.
fall. in
No,
Counting
the thing is
Crows.
there are two.
long December and it's reason to believe.
Maybe this year will be better.
Yeah,
All right,
yeah.
So that's springtime.
But see, but it
This
depends
is
on
after,
which.
after
But it depends
December.
on which album you're listening to. With the Counting Crows, their first album is a fall album. Right? Their second or their third album, the one with Long December, is a winter album.
Yeah. See, they're a band for all seasons.
Yep. Similar to like Jethro Tull, a number of their
Yeah.
albums are very fall, and then a number are very winter. And then
Moody
they have a
Blues,
couple
very
songs-
August.
What season is the movie Willow?
Willow.
August.
No, winter.
What?
It's cold. They're always wearing
Not
coats and
always.
stuff.
He's planting the thing at the beginning, so that would be summertime. But then later, when they're on the road, I feel like that's autumn because they got their.
I think
I
it's.
guess
I
it
think
goes across the season.
it's
a
fall
hurry for all
seasons
seasons.
on Wednesdays.
Yeah,
Any Wednesday is Willow.
yeah, that's true.
pretty
Okay,
much it.
guys.
So that was
Somebody
fall.
help! There's a peck here with an acorn pointed at me.
I'm just gonna start every song I listen to. I'm just gonna like send to you guys to categorize into like.
I'll do it. I'll help
Yes,
you.
please.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we need a new section on the website.
So speaking of the website, I was one of your hosts on the New to You show, and you can find more information about what we talked about this week and the last and the weeks before on newtoyoushow.com. You can also follow the show on Twitter at New to You Show, or leave us a comment on iTunes at
Well, leave us a good
wherever
review
that
if you
is.
like the show.
Yeah, that would be
on
nice.
iTunes.
Even if you don't like it, just give it a good review.
And if you
It
want
can't
to,
Don't be disingenuous because the people at Apple will know.
if you want to find
They
me,
can sniff that out.
Yeah, they're spying on your brain.
yeah. If you want to find me, you can find
They
me,
use
John
Siri to
Holt,
do
What's your
at Lord Joho.
good
You
job?
can
On
find
Twitter.
On Twitter.
And you can find me, Mary Varn, on Twitter at Mary Varn, and you can see my webcomic at npccomic.com.
And you can find me, Julien Koetsch, at Beautiful Jules on Twitter.
And you can find me, Keith Vincent, on earthlingkeith.tumblr.com.
All right.
Oh, and you can also check out my website at jules.cc. Yeah, new URL. What's up?
What is it?
Jules.cc.
What does CC stand for?
Cockamamie, I don't know.
It's a new
Creative
it's
Cloud?
it was from some country that
Wow.
had CC. Just like
Gone.
TV was from some
Right.
small country.
Nice.
Yep, sweet.
Syria.
Jules.cc.
Jules Creative
Man,
Cat.
that's easy.
Yeah, Creative
That's
Cat.
easy to remember.
That's right.
Yeah.
Jules,
So,
one cool customer. CC.
Nice.
Or Cucumber.
Creative Cloud.
That's right.
Czechoslovakian communist. But yeah. So yeah, tune in next week when we'll have more New to You picks. It may not have been new, but hopefully it was new to you.
Average sound defeated by destiny, and still don't know why I'm remaining. So later down the line, I can attempt to say I tried to make a difference, all washed up and left with nothing more than some memories submerged in my failures and giving in to underachievements, letting myself go. Now another that's been cheated, but nobody will ever know since I quit before I can see if